It is 12:01 and I welcome you all. Thank you for joining Def Method and our team for today's product management event on software project estimation, where Def Method's very talented Merziyah Poonawala will be examining how to properly estimate for software development projects. My name is Jennifer Imamura, and I am the Director of Business Development here at Def Method. I'd like to take a moment just to tell you a little bit about our company. Def Method is a New York City-based software consultancy. We have clients throughout the nation, and we follow highly strategic and successful methodologies, including Agile and TDD. We truly pride ourselves on our flexibility and open, transparent processes, and we're committed to keeping projects simple yet very efficient. In addition, obviously, to software development, we provide exemplary product management, delivering a well-organized roadmap that ensures that the product success. Our dedicated team of software engineers and product managers deliver high quality technical solutions through passion, extensive knowledge, and expertise that we've seen consistently drive successful results. Here at Def Method, we truly believe in integrity of providing quality code in continuous learning so that we're always the best for our clients. I welcome you to check out our team, check out everything that we do at defmethod.com, find out more information about who we are and all the services we offer. Just a heads up, there will be time at the end of our event for an audience Q&A. Please send any questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to address any of your questions at that point. And by the way, I will have a few announcements at the very end, including some job openings that we have. Yes, we're hiring. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Merziyah, our Senior Product Manager here at Def Method. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn webinar. So my name is Merziyah, and I am a Senior Product Manager here at Def Method. As a consultant PM, I worked on numerous different startup and greenfield projects, kicking off projects from scratch and delivering MVPs. And along the way, I've experienced quite a few gotchas when it came to estimating projects and navigating projects to meet those deadlines while delivering on the agreed upon deliverables. In some cases, we had to get an extension. In others, we've had to cut scope. In one of my earliest cases, we had to let the client know that the estimations needed to be revised. So today I want to share with you what I've learned in the course of my journey about project estimation and help you improve your software project estimation process. If you are a product manager, an engineer, or even on the business development team, if you're responsible for communicating estimates, this webinar will walk you through how to take the estimates your engineers have given you and then tie up those loose ends, dot the I's, cross the T's, so that your estimates are comprehensive and a better reflection of what you can really expect. So before we get into estimation, we should talk about why estimation is important. Your estimates help establish a timeline and cost for your project and highlights if the project is worth undertaking for the company. This is kind of the first question everyone asks, is given the time and dollars that we're investing, is this going to be profitable for the company? The second is your revenue stream, which is also critical for business continuity and drives profitability. Your project completion schedule may determine when and how revenue will come. And this can be of importance, for example, with time to market, if you have other competitors in the space, and your project estimation will guide you in this process. Resourcing is another aspect that needs to be considered. Hiring takes time, and knowing how your project is going to evolve will help you plan accordingly for your resource needs. Your sales and marketing team may also have specific deadlines around launch and product announcements that will need to be coordinated. And you may have externally imposed deadlines, external conditions that can determine the success of your project. Seasonality is a big one if you need to deliver in time for, let's say, the holiday seasons for a success criteria, or even meeting regulatory deadlines. Your estimates will help you determine if you should cut scope, if you need to add resources, How are you going to make your project reach its point of success? And then there's the build and buy decision. And having estimates, the comprehensive estimates can help you make the right choice in a build or buy decision. All right, so we have the prerequisites. So what are some of the prerequisites for estimation? First of all, you need to know what you are going to be estimating. We have assumed here that you've identified your problem, you know how you're going to solve it, you know who you're going to solve it for and how you're going to solve it. We often run a discovery session to help us define our overall product, lay out the blueprint for our MVP or core deliverable, and in this process also prioritize our features. Having your work prioritized will help inform the level of detail you need in your requirements. So near-time features that are soon to be delivered need to be properly understood and have well-developed requirements. Things that are in the future or lower priority that are subject to change may be less concretely defined and correspondingly have less specific estimates. You also want to have an idea of what technology you will be using, what integrations may be involved, what resources you need and what your team is going to look like. It is important that the team estimating the project is also the team that's actually going to work on it, as different skill sets will have an impact on your project estimation. Right, level of specificity. So estimation is a time-consuming activity, and it is worthwhile to know what the estimate is needed for and what degree of specificity is required. If your project is in the initial feasibility stage, you might be interested in a more general sense of the project, what the actual cost and timeline would be. So in this case, maybe t-shirt sizing. So you would just take your features and rate them as small, medium, large, extra large, may be sufficient without getting into too much detail. If needed, these t-shirt sizing approximations can be converted into a number of days based on learnings from past projects. If you've decided that the project is feasible and now looking to allocate resources and crafting a budget, you will probably be requested for a time-based estimate. A time-based estimate involves estimating your project in number of days or weeks that it'll take. And oftentimes this is something that your business unit will request from you. An alternate way of estimating projects is using story points. Story points are a numeric value, often using a Fibonacci scale that is assigned to each user's story based on complexity of the user's story. Since story points have absolutely no time value associated with them, they're not valuable until a project has started. However, once a project is underway and you have gone through a couple of sprints, you will have built up a history of your velocity, which is how many story points you are delivering each sprint. And these story points can then form a good predictor of your timeline, because velocity averages across all the different types of engineering work, including the front end, back end, integration, refactoring, etc. And all of this ties really closely with the level of detail that your project requirements are in. So the less concrete your feature definition, the less specific your estimation will be. In fact, in software development, there is a concept of cone of uncertainty, which states that at the beginning of a project, your estimates can be off by a factor of plus or minus 4 times what you claim at the start of the project. And as the project evolves and gets further defined, this estimation range narrows down. And so something to think about. As you start development, you will find that your level of understanding further improves. You will gain better understanding of the technology that's being used, of the product infrastructure. You also get a better sense of your team and their skill set. You have a better understanding of market conditions and your users. All of these will help drive more specific and better estimation as your project progresses. Cone of uncertainty is something that's great to just keep in mind as you go through your estimating of your projects. So now that we have all our prerequisites ironed out, let's jump into our estimation review conversation and see what that looks like. This is a conversation where we take estimates that have been delivered to us by our engineers and dive deeper into additional factors that we need to account for. So here's a checklist of some of the items that we expect to cover in our estimation review conversation today. We look through our engineering estimates for any gaps and additional work that hasn't been accounted for. We'll consider design. We'll also consider QA and UAT needs and additional overheads in the project. We'll consider what our time cost is versus what our actual delivery time frame might be, and what are some other external factors that impact our estimates. For today's conversation, we have a greenfield project called the Calculator Project, and we will be developing a brand new, you guessed it, a calculator app. And to join me to help demonstrate what a estimation review conversation looks like, I have two of our senior engineers from Def Method, Ben and Keith, joining me. Ben and Keith, would you like to say hi, introduce yourself, and let everyone know what role you'll be playing today?
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm as Merziyah said, senior engineer at Def Method, and today I'll be playing the role of an engineering lead.
And howdy, I'm Keith Perfetti. I'm also a senior engineer at Def Method. As Ben and I started on the same day, and I'm going to be acting as the product manager.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, we are building an app to reinvent the calculator, and our client is hoping for a 3-month turnaround. We just wrapped up the discovery process, have generated a list of features and requirements, and these have been, Ben's team has sat and estimated these features. We're now looking to build the app. We've got a request for the estimate that will inform both the cost and delivery timeframe. So we are currently looking at estimating in terms of days and weeks. What you're seeing here is our estimation spreadsheet. It is a plain old spreadsheet that we use, no fancy tools here. Ben has sat with this team of engineers, spent a couple of hours reviewing all the features, and they have come up with a time-based estimate broken into 3 categories. We like breaking our feature set into the must-haves, which are the features that we cannot launch without, the should-haves, what we find important but can launch without, and if needed, and the nice-to-haves, which are not essential to the product, but add value for the users. Using this breakdown, we provide estimates for the must and should-haves for the project, with the understanding that if complexities arrive, some of the should-haves may drop off, but if we also make good progress, we can dive into the nice-to-have bucket of features.
So howdy, Ben. I see these estimates already. So let's look at them. They seem to have like a must-have, should-have, nice-to-have with your level of confidence in each of your estimates. So do you think we're good to come up with an estimate for our best and worst case scenarios?
Yeah, so based on the sheet, you can see that we think we'll have all the core functionality, all the must-haves built after about 2.5 months. And after that, we can continue to iterate until we have everything that the client has requested, which we estimate at 6 months in total.
So honor the estimates and build trust. Don't say
6 months? We were thinking more like 3. Pretty sure the client only wants it at 3. We might lose them. So like, what do we do for you to finish everything in 3 months?
don't pressure or bias your engineers into providing estimates you would like to see. Often sales pressure can make engineers underestimate, and they are underestimators to begin with, which only leads to missed deadlines, tech debt from shortcuts taken to meet those deadlines, and a stress bomb of a project. Do say.
Alrighty, 6 months. So let's just break this down, see what we can get done in 3 months, and then if we have any misunderstandings about something that's going on, see if we can't get it down a little bit faster.
Honor the estimates your engineers give and build trust so that they feel comfortable being honest about giving you realistic estimates, and also discuss the risks that both of you see in those estimates. This really allows you to build realistic estimates and communicate upfront where you feel confident and where you see risks in the estimates. This goes a long way in building healthy expectations across the team. Break it down.
So looking at this user onboarding story, it's estimated for about a week. That seems kind of long.
Yeah, I agree. We put it at about a week as sort of an average, since we don't have any specifications for what's actually involved in this story. Could be as simple as just collecting a name and a password, or we could have a multi-page wizard where we're asking for, favorite colors, favorite numbers, favorite additions, that sort of thing. So we put it kind of in the middle of those two things.
All right. I see where you're coming from. So like, let's break it down into smaller stories, and then we get some more specifics around it, and that way we can have an actual accurate estimate.
The smaller and more specific the user stories, the more accurately it'll be estimated. A very large estimate implies that there are a lot of unknowns or pieces involved, and it is always worth breaking those user stories into smaller components to better estimate smaller pieces of work. Spikes and research.
Hey, Keith, I saw in this user story, the client wants to add some animations to this calculator. Just a heads up, it's going to take a little bit of time till we research what exactly we're going to need to use to make those animations.
Okay, so like, why don't we set up like a day for you to start looking into that? Is there any other spikes that we might need to do in any other areas of the app?
Sure, any other animations we might need to add ahead of time. And we also have a few integrations that we're going to need to research.
Identifying the unknowns in your project will help you build allowance for time your team needs to research and present solutions for those unknowns. Integrations.
So it kind of looks like we have 2 third-party number providers that we have to integrate with. How did you estimate these?
So just as a rough estimate, we took, we did this assuming that the API documentation is clear and straightforward, and we're not going to have too many big issues sending and parsing those numbers.
Famous last words. Nothing's ever straightforward, and there's always going to be some hiccups. And you're going to have to write a bunch of additional testing around it to make sure that it works and account for error handling. Do we have any data from integrating with these in the past?
Yeah, I looked into that. Last time we did something like this, there's some Jira tickets and we estimated it integrating with plus and minus.io. We estimated a day for each integration, but turns out that it took 3 days after all.
All right, so let's go off that.
Engineers will often estimate integrations based on the coding work they anticipate. However, an integration always involves additional time reviewing API documentation, edge cases, and ensuring proper handling. All of this requires thorough testing, which should be accounted for. Past experience.
So how similar is this to the Abacus project you built in the past?
Well, there's definitely a lot of common functionality.
Did you look at what it took to build those features? Because I think we could use that as an estimate for what's going to take to build this time.
So I did review those features, but we're doing things a little bit differently this time. For the Abacus, we used beads.js for a lot of our kind of movement through the app. And this time we're using a totally different language. We're using pushbutton.js. And since it's a different technology, even though the features are kind of similar, we're going to have to build things in a totally different way.
Using past experience can actually serve as a very good guideline to building new features. Let's say you're integrating with an external service. If it took 2 days to build, it is likely to take close to 2 days to build again. However, when using past experience, you must also consider how similar the projects are. Difference in technology, different team skill sets may mean that you need to adjust data from previous experience, so which can serve as a guide, but may not be an accurate reflection of estimates with this time around. Team skill and experience.
So how familiar is the team with pushbutton.js and these integrations that we're doing?
Not that familiar. Out of 4 of us, only Jeff has experience with pushbutton.js. So I did account for a little extra time for the rest of the team to get up to speed.
Cool. I think we should also consider that while Tom was expected to be part of the team, while we were estimating, now it looks like he's going to be assigned to a totally different project. So I think we should probably consider that when we submit the final estimation, since Tom was the most familiar with being able to count.
Consider your team's skill when calculating your estimates and the time needed to familiarize the engineers with the technology and code base. This also means estimates are non-transferable. I've had projects which were estimated by a senior engineer, but then got got staffed by another engineer who was a lot more deliberate in their coding and informalizing documentation, which was helpful, especially when it came to handling the code. But needless to say, we realized shortly after starting the project that we weren't trending at the pace indicated by our estimates. If the engineer assigned had provided the estimates, he would have accounted for the time that it would have taken him to finish the features. It's also good to learn how your engineers think about estimates. So some engineers will assume the most basic approach to design, while others will actually build in time anticipating some design work. Knowing this can help you make the necessary adjustments. It is also good to have a team of multiple engineers collaborate on the estimation rather than getting estimates from a single engineer. Estimating for product stage.
Do you think we've missed anything else in regards to our engineering estimates?
Well, now that you mention it, we should factor in a little bit of additional time at the beginning to set up the project infrastructure. Since this is greenfield, it's not like we have anything to work off of. Also, then at the end, we should add a little bit of extra time before the launch to wrap up some error testing and any bugs that may come back, as well as any feedback from QA or alpha testers.
That's good to note. And on my part, I think we should also account for some initial customer support time to get them up to speed once we give them the project.
When estimating your projects, you want to consider what stage it is in. As Ben mentioned, a new project requires some initial time to set up the initial infrastructure, often has design feedback as the team develops the initial look of the app. And also, since admin functionality on an MVP may be limited, there may be heavy reliance on engineering support initially to help issues from the back end. On the flip side, existing applications will require additional time for refactoring, fixing existing bugs, and supporting existing activities. Evaluating design, the designer.
Given that we're building a brand new app, I've hired a designer for the project. Did you get the first draft of their design?
Yeah, I got their wireframes. Those should be enough for us to start building. Once the patterns establish themselves, we should kind of need direct input from the designer less and less.
If design is a component of your project, make sure to run an estimation with the designer to include the design estimation into your total estimate. We've also found design work tends to be heavier at the start, especially when going through your discovery process. Once the design system is in place and your MVP has been wireframed, the design needs will taper. Design fidelity.
So we've only got wireframes right now. Did you take that into account when you were estimating these stories?
I did, but we do never know what's going to come up when we do get the high fidelity designs. Sometimes they often change the scope of what we're going to need to do. Any tricky UX features like floating headers, tend to creep in. Those will take more time, and we won't know if we need those until we get the full designs.
All right, that's good to know. I think once we get the high fidelity design, let's revisit these estimates, and that way we can recommunicate what sort of changes we expect.
I've had projects that we estimated based on a description of the individual features with barely any wireframes, with the promise that we would have high fidelity wireframes to follow soon. Once we got the wireframes, what was a search screen was now a search screen with a button menu to filter, and then subcategories under each of those. And then there were additional filtering requirements, sorting logic. Also, the results was now being displayed on a zoomable map. Needless to say, the functionality involved was so much greater and more complex than what we had originally estimated that we couldn't really scope down the project to the original estimates and had to stop work and go back to the client. So designs communicate a lot of the requirements. So make sure you either have enough context or give yourself the room to go back and revisit the estimates once you do get the final designs of the project. Accessibility.
So what are we doing to make sure the site is accessible to all users, including those who might be differently abled? And how much was that going to increase the scope of this project?
So while we're building it, we are going to do our best to select tools that kind of include accessibility features baked in, like Bootstrap and Bumbag for React. Some of this is going to add a little bit of extra time since not everybody on the team is completely experienced with building for accessibility. Additionally, QA might take a little bit longer since we're going to have to get tests for not only the view that you use with your eyes and a mouse, but also for screen readers and keyboard navigation.
Ensuring your website is accessible to everyone is important, especially as websites are interpreted the same as public spaces according to the Americans with Disability Act. Websites with significant inaccessible components can be seen as discriminatory to people with disabilities. To be compliant, you want to make sure you meet as many of the web content accessibility guidelines as possible. Test, QA, UAT, and bugs.
So is your perfect day estimate taking into account writing code tests?
Yes, all of our estimates take into account writing fully tested code, as we kind of view it as just part of writing code in general. We do also add some time to the estimates for writing a basic UI layout and any consideration we might have to take to UAT feedback.
That's good. I've been burnt before on that. And when engineers don't include time for the tests, it's just a mess. So never gonna have that. Never gonna have that again.
You should always make sure your engineers are not just thinking about the time it'll take to code a feature, but that their estimates also include time to write tests and for writing tests and the deployment process. Also, just a piece of advice, check in with your engineers regarding test coverage throughout the project. The last thing you want to hear near crunch time is your engineers say, oh, I'll be spending today adding code tests to the project. QA, UAT, and bugs.
So it looks like we're going to have one QA resource for the team. So I'm going to include that in our resource count. Are you in contact with them?
Yeah, it's a good call. I am, and we should also just add that to our time for addressing anything that the QA does find.
All right, great. So I think what we should do for a project of this size, probably add like a week at the end of it for our estimate to resolve any open bugs, any sort of enhancements or design feedback that we get before launch.
Be sure to account for QA and UAT feedback in your estimation. I found, especially on greenfield projects, the team collects a number of bugs and product tweaks, especially related to design. And dedicating a week near the end, near the launch date can really help team take care of cleaning up the bug backlog, the small UAT tweak backlog, the copy backlog. Yes, I've had projects where we collected a couple of different backlogs of issues. These are non-essential issues that don't impact the functionality of your app, but they do negatively impact the user perception of the app. So getting these resolved can be highly valuable. If your team is also responsible for supporting existing users, you may have to fix bugs in the existing code base as well. If that's the case, then having an idea of what trends with bug reports and customer support needs, what the trends are with bug reports and customer support needs can help you build allowance for this work into your project. Overheads. Agile ceremonies.
Hey, Keith, I've been meaning to mention this to you. I noticed looking through the estimates that we don't have any times for our meetings in the estimation.
That's a good catch. We definitely need to start accounting for the Agile ceremonies as they're a critical part of this process.
Agile ceremonies and stakeholder meetings should be accounted for in your project budget. One of my initial lessons was with a project running over and then realizing that one of the reasons was that when we delivered the estimates, we had looked at coding time, but had not considered the additional time that was being spent in meetings, and our engineers were spending an additional 2 hours per week roughly on meetings that wasn't accounted for in the budget or the timeline. So do the math on your estimated meeting schedule and make sure to add it to your estimates. Product and project management.
Hey Keith, do we need to add some estimates for engineering time for prioritization and keeping track of requirements and story writing, that sort of thing?
So actually, we have a product manager resource for this project. They're going to ensure we keep up with a bunch of the Agile ceremonies. They're going to make sure the requirements stay updated, and then they're going to prioritize the work with feedback from the client.
Don't forget to account for your product manager. A product manager will ensure your team is building the right things and keep the team focused on building towards the identified goals. From an engineering standpoint, they also help clarify requirements, make sure your engineering team has all the information they need in order to be effective and efficient. Your project may involve a separate project management component. It's typical to build in 20% of project management, project as management overhead. Project timeline.
So now that we've covered identifying the time cost of the project, are there any other non-development things that could extend the date? Are you going on any vacations? Anybody on the team? Any holidays I don't know about?
Yeah, actually, I just scheduled a 2-week vacation starting in a few weeks, so I will be out for a little while.
Okay, that's good to know. And I think Giselda also provides emergency support for another project, and there's a risk she's going to get pulled off for a few days every now and then to handle some fires over there.
This is an important question to ask. When you provide your stakeholder with an estimate, you will want to include non-project related factors that may affect your delivery date estimate. If you estimate the project to take 12 weeks, for example, and during those 12 weeks, your engineers are scheduled on a 2-week vacation, your delivery time will obviously be closer to 14 weeks. So along with your estimated time, make sure you account and specify time that you expect. Make sure you account for the time for the delivery date of the project outside of your time cost estimate on your project. Risks and assumptions. No project is free from risks and assumptions. Identifying these upfront can help you plan for possible mitigation and changes to the project. A couple of areas where you want to think through what the risk and assumptions you might face are the business environment and market conditions. Are there any assumptions of possible changes that may impact your team or delivery date? COVID is a good example of where changes in working condition and market conditions impacted what can be delivered and what is needed. Product requirements can be also impacted by impacted as assumptions are validated through user testing and user interviews. And engineering and technology, what are some of the assumptions built into their engineering and technology that can be accounted for by building in time for spikes in research? A good example of this is we have a product we're working on that involves a hardware component, and there's a risk of the hardware component not being ready or delivered in time, which will impact our project estimates as well. So highlighting those risks is important in building good communication with your stakeholders. And some additional notes. Your estimates are not valid forever. This is something good to keep in mind. They come with the validity period. And there are a number of factors that impact the validity of your estimates. Changes to the engineering resource that's available, changes in skill sets, new knowledge about the product and the market space, changes to design, all impact your estimates. Padding estimates is interesting. So padding estimates can build mistrust, especially with engineers. However, if you do have data that suggests that your projects are consistently underestimated, you may consider padding just to bring your estimates, to make your estimates come to a more realistic level. However, it is always worth looking into where your estimates are falling short so you can address those directly. Estimates are also never a single number, always a range. As we saw with the cone of uncertainty, this range will narrow as your project is further defined, but it is best to state your estimates as a best and worst case scenario. And lastly, based on your discussion with your engineers as well as with other stakeholders, and highlighting the unknown factors, risks, and assumptions built into your project, you can actually present your estimates with a level of confidence. So we are saying something like we are 80% confident we'll complete this project in the given estimate range, can go a long way in building trust in your estimates. Estimates are not a static number game. I believe the transparency of your estimation process can go a long way in building trust with your stakeholders. Share with them what your process is and what factors you've considered in building your estimates, where the risks are and where you feel confident. Projects where stakeholders understand the challenges of estimation and understand what goes into it, and that's not an exact science, are also more open to conversations when estimates need to be adjusted or revisited. And so with that, we've done a pretty comprehensive overview of our calculator project estimation here. And here's our checklist again. Have you come across additional factors that we may not have considered included into our checklist? If so, do let us know at Def Method Inc. on Twitter, Facebook, or on LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you. And with that, we are ready for some Q&A.
Hey, Merziyah, I've got a question here from the attendees. So, do you have any tools that you use to help you estimate a software project or otherwise?
We generally just do our estimation on a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet that you see that we kind of showed a little bit earlier. We do break our features into different buckets. The other thing that we do is for each, we ask our engineers to estimate by perfect days. So what they think would be the ideal condition or ideal sort of day estimate to complete a feature. And then we also ask them to provide a level of confidence with it. And then we use that level of confidence to factor in a range for each of the features. And that's how we total and get our sort of range of our min and max estimation. But no fancy tools.
Cool. Next question is, how do you mitigate the risks that arise from assumptions held at the outset of a project?
Great question. So with mitigating risk, that is a conversation that you should have at the start of the project. So you can take each of your risks and then you can talk through what the mitigation actions might be. In some cases, you will be able to come up with some concrete either experiments you can do or information that you can gather to mitigate those risks. And highlighting those up front can help. So it may not be something that you would have a time estimation on, but you can definitely highlight those for the team. And in some cases, you may have some risks that you, as a team, agreed don't have any clear path towards mitigation at the start of the projects, but keeping that in the front and center can help the team as a whole be conscious of those risk factors as the project evolves and as you get more information. As I said, you should always have some room to go back and revisit your estimates with your stakeholders, and keeping that conversation open and transparent always helps.
One of the questions is, do we subscribe to using any product management software in particular? And how do we keep our documentation good using those?
Yeah, the more popular product management tools that we use have been Pivotal Tracker, Trello, Jira, and usually we write our requirements in terms of user stories. We will include, functional, non-functional requirements in the user stories as well as acceptance criteria. And usually that forms sort of the documentation for our project. We subscribe to an Agile kind of framework, and there's more focus on conversation rather than formalized documentation.
This one may be a question for Keith and I here, but I'm going to pass it to Merziyah first. So what techniques do you use to arrive at the confidence levels for a given set of tasks or a given estimate?
Actually, I think, Ben and Keith, that is definitely a question for the engineers to answer.
I know personally, I usually base it around how much I know about the story. So in parts, as we talked about earlier, if we have a rough design, I'm never going to set my confidence on a story at any particularly high level. And if I'm not really sure about a technology that we're using, or if I haven't used an API before, it usually drives down my confidence as well. But I don't think we ever really truly put anything above like an 80% confidence, because there's always stuff that's going to crop up. And I think it helps pad a little bit of space on either side to let us know, like, this might be easier than we think it is, but it, you know, you never want to assume it's going to be easy.
Yeah, I agree with Keith. Just to say that it's a lot easier to give a confidence if you've broken something down to a small enough piece. And in that, it really helps to have very specific stories or very small stories. So, because a lot of what we've done, people have done before, and we have experience with something like, letting a user enter their email and password to sign up for a website. Those are things that we've done before. So if you can get something small enough, you can have a higher confidence level in it.
Cool, thanks, guys.
Do we have time for more questions here?
Yeah, I think we can take one more.
Okay, so we've got one other question. So how do you calculate the critical path for a project? So forward pass, backward pass, float, etc.
In terms of, we don't actually usually do a calculation of the critical path in our projects. As I mentioned earlier, we kind of take an agile approach. So we plan each week or each sprint what we want to build in the next sprint. And to start all of that off, we'll usually run a discovery process. So we'll have our set of features up front, and we'll have those prioritized. And then as we work through each sprint, we work through the list of priorities that we have, keeping in mind that at any point, if the project requirements change, if there's some new learnings that come up from the market or from user testing, we can incorporate those into our estimation. Into our planning and prioritize changes that come across in our in our project sort of plan, so to speak.
We have another question. I think we still have some time. How do we include usability testing and other types of user research? Do we include it as part of design?
So we usually, if we are working with our client to build out, to kind of work on building out the prototype for them, then when we go through the prototyping process, we will include some user testing built into it, where we will walk users through the prototype and observe them, and also get them to speak out loud what their thoughts are on it, and take the learnings from those and then reiterate if need be. And then following, once we are in development mode, we try to structure our project such that we are able to build, to deliver pieces, iteratively deliver the product, where we can have users view the product as we are building it, so we can constantly get feedback along as we are developing the product as well.
As a developer, I find it super helpful because it often means that we're getting feedback maybe a week or two after we finish a part. And it's far easier for me to go back after having written something a week versus if we were to wait till the end of the project and let users start hitting whatever we're building at the very end. Then when I'm going back to build it, it's been months and I don't really remember exactly how I built it. So like this sort of stuff really does help keep the velocity higher.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending the webinar. We are, if you want to share with us, as I mentioned, we are available on social media. It would be great to connect. Feel free to connect with us. There we go. And at that, I'm going to pass it on to Jen.
Yeah, actually, you're gonna say my spiel for everyone. So thanks, Merziyah. Yes, thank you everyone for joining. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for the last 45 minutes or so. It's been fun. As mentioned in the beginning, we have some awesome announcements. We are hiring. We are currently looking for a senior software engineer, as well as a UI UX designer and an HR specialist. So if you or someone you know are looking and are able to fit one of these roles, please apply. You can find the link right there, defmethod.com/join us. Also, we have what we call product and engineering office hours. I believe, Kathy, thank you. You put a link in the chat for anyone that's interested. And this is a free service that we offer to anyone who has come across a hurdle or that is in need of a little bit of expertise. We're able to provide you some and give you a little bit of advice. So if you're working on a project, whether it's an engineering need or a product management need, feel free to sign up. And one of our expert engineers or product managers, possibly even Merziyah from today, would be able to help you. Merziyah actually mentioned this, but please follow us on any of our social media forums. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, Facebook, and we have blog posts on Medium. Very awesome stuff there. And we also have a newsletter, so please feel free to sign up for that. And last but not least, our next event will be in October. It will be a panelist event similar to what we had back in August. More to come on that. Please stay tuned, sign up for our newsletter, and you will hear more about that in the coming weeks. Thank you again for joining us. It's been fun. Have a good rest of the day and an amazing weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Go team.
Go team.